Mr. Chairman, thank you. I appreciate your holding this hearing and your indulgence. And to the Ranking Member Conyers, I enjoy a good working relationship with you, and I enjoy your friendship, and I expect that to continue in the future, and I appreciate the discussion today. I also want to note and thank Chairman Issa, who was the chairman of the Oversight Committee when much of this work was happening. Many of these hearings were happening, and through his good work and tenacious approach to this, it was an important step, and it wouldn't be here today, quite frankly, without the good work and leadership of Darrell Issa. This is really a simple case in my mind. When Congress asks you a question, you're expected to give a truthful answer. And when Congress issues a subpoena, compliance is not optional. Imagine if a taxpayer failed to comply with an IRS summons or subpoena. What would they do to you? If they ask you for those materials, you're expected to produce those materials, and if you don't, they're going to take you to court, and they're probably going to win. The IRS targeting scandal was un-American. The IRS is the most powerful and feared entity in the United States. The First Amendment rights of citizens were trampled upon. Now, in fairness, Mr. Koskinen, as the commissioner of the IRS, was not there for the initial targeting. He was brought in by President Obama as a turnaround artist, somebody who would work hand in hand with Congress to fix the problem. From my perspective, he didn't fix the problem, he made it worse. There have been numerous hearings, letters, and subpoenas issued by a variety of committees. Now, the IRS is no stranger to a summons or a subpoena. They know exactly how this works. In fact, on average, they issue about 66,000 summons and subpoenas per year, and they have since 2010. Failure to obey an IRS summons is a criminal violation under 26 U.S.C. Section 7210 and carries with it a fine up to $1,000 and a year of imprisonment. If you don't comply, the IRS is going to come after you. They do prosecute. The IRS prevailed in 95% of those cases. Again, compliance with the subpoena is not optional. Providing false testimony before Congress comes with a consequence. At least it should. It's a crime. Mr. Koskinen did not tell the truth to Congress. He provided false testimony and failed to comply with a subpoena. He could have prevented evidence from being destroyed, but he didn't, and he didn't tell the truth about it. Americans are rightfully frustrated about the targeting scandal and the lack of accountability. But the case before us is about Mr. Koskinen and what he did and did not do, which permanently deprived the American people of understanding what went wrong with their government. It also prevents us, Congress, from fully fixing the problem and holding people accountable. And there can't be full accountability because the evidence was destroyed on Mr. Koskinen's watch and under a subpoena. The remedy given to us in the Constitution is impeachment. It is a remedy designed for Congress as a co-equal voice. The Senate gives its advice and consent on confirming presidential appointments. But our founders in that Constitution also gave us an opportunity to remove somebody if they're not serving the best interest of the United States of America. The Senate has the opportunity to have a co-equal voice in who serves in the upper echelons of government, and the safety valve to pull somebody out of there for Congress is impeachment. Hasn't been done often enough, and I think we must stand up for ourselves. Now, give some background. I'm going to show a video. It's about 10 minutes, and then we'll get into the very specifics of where I think Mr. Koskinen lied.
From the woman at the center of the IRS
scandal involving IRS targeting of conservative groups.
Where's Lois Lerner?
Lois Lerner. Targeting conservative groups.
Lois Lerner.
That's when Lois Lerner's... This was orchestrated, it was planned.
The possibility of criminal activity.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth. Let the record indicate that the witness did answer in the affirmative.
On the advice of my counsel, I respectfully exercise my Fifth Amendment right and decline to answer that question.
The IRS and Lois Lerner, something we've only received over the years in bits and pieces. But what does it look like all pieced together? Let's rewind. In 2013, the IRS admitted to the selective intentional targeting of American taxpayers based on their political beliefs. This is Lois Lerner. She was the IRS employee with the most knowledge of the intentional targeting, but when called to testify, she refused. With the key witness unwilling to cooperate, to get to the truth, Congress had to obtain and review documents. What followed was a sequence of obfuscation, obstruction, and destruction of evidence by the IRS, which has left the American people with no real answers to why their First Amendment rights were violated. With rumors of targeting percolating, in June 2011, Ways and Means Chairman Dave Camp sends the first letter to the IRS related to the allegations of the IRS's mistreatment of conservative groups. 9 months later, in March 2012, Chairman Darrell Issa and Jim Jordan of the House Oversight Committee send a letter to the IRS requesting information. By May 2013, the IRS admits to targeting, and Chairman Issa and Jordan send yet another letter to the IRS requesting information. The President acknowledges wrongdoing and pledges cooperation.
It's inexcusable, and Americans are right to be angry about it. Our administration has to make sure that we are working hand in hand with Congress to get this thing fixed.
By August, the Oversight Committee issues its first subpoena, and the committee sends a letter to the Treasury Secretary reminding him of the obligation to preserve all emails. At this point, 3 congressional committees, the Inspector General, and the DOJ all have investigations underway. Fast forward 9 months. After he condemned the targeting, President Obama states in a February 2014 interview that there is not a smidgen of corruption.
Not even mass corruption, not even a smidgen of corruption.
But all these investigations are still open. Even the investigation he ordered was not complete. So how did the president arrive at this conclusion? What did he become aware of in those 9 months? Meanwhile, IRS Commissioner Koskinen appears before multiple congressional panels, promising to deliver all of Lois Lerner's emails.
Are you going to provide the documents for Lois Lerner
Yes,
that were subpoenaed?
yes. We're working very hard to get you the Lois Lerner emails.
Are you or are you not going to provide this committee all of Lois Lerner's emails?
We are already
Yes,
starting that process. Yes, we will do that.
Until he starts backtracking and obfuscating and parsing.
Process. We'll redact them. There's going to be thousands of pages, but it's not going to expedite the conclusion of this investigation.
And then, in June 2014, he tells Congress that Lerner's emails could not be recovered.
As the actual hard drive, after it was determined that it was dysfunctional and that with experts no emails could be retrieved, was recycled and destroyed in the normal process. This was,
So was it physically destroyed?
that's my understanding.
So what could have possibly happened for the commissioner to make such a statement? Remember that very first letter from Chairman Camp to the IRS in June 2011? Well, coincidentally, Lois Lerner's hard drive crashes just 8 days later. What are the odds? Her hard drive crashing within a week of an inquiry from Congress truly defies all odds. This hard drive will sit in a bin for nearly 8 months, until it is destroyed, within weeks of an IRS internal investigation commencing. Another coincidence. In April 2013, a month before admitting to the targeting, Lois Lerner reminds colleagues to be cautious about what we say in emails. And on that same day, asks whether the internal instant messaging system is archived. When told no, Lerner responds, "Perfect." So back to May 2013. The IRS just admitted to targeting and the president just promised cooperation. Lois Lerner comes before Congress and takes the fifth. And on the exact same day, nearly 2 years after Congress started asking questions, the IRS finally issues a non-destruct order to all IRS personnel. So with an admission of targeting, subpoenas, and investigations underway, we return to the president's peculiar comments from February 2014.
Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Well, on the same day the president makes those comments, the IRS discovers a problem, a gap in Lois Lerner's emails. Thousands of emails are missing from around the critical period in the targeting in 2011. Remember, her hard drive crashed. Staff recognizes the need to collect backup tapes that might contain emails from the relevant time frame. Good thing for that non-destruct order and the subpoena from Congress ordering the preservation of documents. But on March 4th, 2014, 422 backup tapes containing emails from the relevant time frame are destroyed. This is 30 days after realizing there's a gap and 8 months after the non-destruct order and the subpoena. How does something like this happen? The IG testifies that it's truly an unbelievable set of circumstances.
How in the world, with the preservation order and a subpoena, do they destroy 422 tapes?
It's an unbelievable set of circumstances that would allow that to happen.
And wasn't Commissioner Koskinen appearing before Congress at this same time, assuring members that the IRS would turn over all emails? Did the commissioner intentionally mislead Congress? Testimony suggests that the IRS knew that Lois Lerner's emails had been destroyed at the time of the commissioner's March testimony. Remember all the open investigations. Besides Congress and the DOJ, the IG was also investigating varying aspects of the targeting scandal. They started looking into Lois Lerner's emails in June 2014. Here's their story. In June 2014, the IG opens its investigations into the missing Lois Lerner emails. Commissioner Koskinen confirms that Lois Lerner's emails cannot be recovered and describes the great lengths the IRS has gone trying to find them.
We've spent, as I've noted, at last count, $18 million responding. We've had over 250 employees at various times involved. We've had over 100 or 120,000 hours of effort devoted to it. And as I said, we've gone to great lengths. We've retraced the process for producing her email twice just to make sure that no email was missing. We understand the importance of this investigation. We've gone to great lengths, spent a significant amount of money trying to make sure that there is no email that is required that has not been produced.
They didn't find any. Meanwhile, the IG is looking for backup tapes. Just 15 days into their investigation, the IG drives 1.5 hours from D.C. to an IRS facility in West Virginia and asks for backup tapes used to back up Lois Lerner's email account. They are handed 744 tapes.
It's identified the 744 backup tapes that met this criterion, and TIGTA took possession of all of the identified 744 backup tapes.
Attendants at the facility said no one ever asked them for the tapes, but that they've been there all along.
IRS in testimony and letters stated that it left, and I quote, "no stone unturned," end quote, to recover the emails. Was that true?
And we were able to recover emails. So it would appear that that statement is
That
a relative
statement was
statement.
not true. July 2014, IRS officials testified that it, quote, confirmed the emails were unrecoverable, end quote. Given that recoverable data still existed on the tapes, was that statement true?
It would not appear to be true.
It would not appear to be true, and I quote, no way, end quote, to recover them. Was that true?
That would not appear to be true.
That would not appear to be true. We have established here today multiple incidents where the IRS did not tell the truth.
Throughout the course of their investigation, which went into the summer of 2015, the IG recovers 1,000 unique emails that were never turned over by the IRS.
But what did they do with these emails?
To the best we can determine through the investigation, they just simply didn't look for those. So for the over 1,000 emails that we found on the backup tapes, we found them because we looked for them.
They had them. They were under subpoena. What a coincidence.
Remember those 422 tapes that were destroyed after the IRS knew they were missing emails? And after the non-destruct order was in place? And 8 months after the subpoena? If those had been properly preserved, an additional 24,000 emails may have been recovered. And maybe there would be answers. But the American people will never know, because the IRS didn't do its job of preserving the information the way it was obligated to do. The IG also concluded in its investigation that the IRS neglected to search sources beyond Lois Lerner's hard drive for emails.
How many potential sources for recovering Ms. Lerner's emails existed for the IRS?
We believe there were 6. The hard drive would have been a source, BlackBerry, backup tapes, server drives, the backup tapes for the server drives, and then finally the loaner laptops.
How many of these 6 did the IRS search?
We're not aware that they searched anyone in particular.
They didn't look for backup tapes. They didn't look at her BlackBerry. They didn't look at the server, or backup server, or the loaner laptop. So what great lengths did they really go to?
On the advice of my counsel, I respectfully exercise my Fifth Amendment right and decline to answer that question.
The bottom line, IRS didn't fulfill its legal obligation to respond to Congress. They didn't preserve information. They didn't try to find the information. They misled Congress for years. Their failings leave the American people in the dark about how their First Amendment rights were trampled upon. There must be accountability.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing us to show that video. I want to drill down a little bit further on Mr. Koskinen's testimony to Congress, especially some of the statements made to Congress in June and July of the year 2014, when he came to explain why the IRS wouldn't be able to produce thousands of Lois Lerner's emails. At that point, a subpoena had been in place since August of 2013. The subpoena was reissued to Mr. Koskinen after he was confirmed, so by then the subpoena had had his name on it for more than 5 months. On February 2nd, 2014, Super Bowl Sunday, Kate Duvall realized that there was a problem with Ms. Lerner's emails and that some of them were missing from the IRS production to Congress. Ms. Duvall was counsel to the commissioner at the time, and she was basically managing the IRS production to Congress. The next day, on February 3rd, Ms. Duvall told her colleagues at the IRS about the problem she had found. She told the IT people. She talked to the people in the Office of Chief Counsel. She talked to the Deputy Associate Chief Counsel, Thomas Kane. And by the next day, February 4th, Thomas Kane had figured out that Lois Lerner's hard drive had crashed back in 2011, and that was why many of her emails were missing. So the IRS knew in early February that there was a problem with Ms. Lerner's emails. And Mr. Koskinen testified that he knew in February. This is his quote on a July 23rd, 2014 hearing. Quote, "What I was advised and knew in February was that when you look at the emails that had already been provided to the committee and other investigations, and instead of looking them by search terms, looked at them by date, it was clear that there were fewer emails in the period through 2011 and subsequently. And there was also, I was told, there had been a problem with Ms. Lerner's computer." So the question is, what did Mr. Koskinen, under subpoena, do about it? After all, he had this subpoena. He had just learned that most crucial evidence covered by the subpoena was missing, and so you'd expect him to spring into action. Well, let's start with what he did not do. According to the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration, he failed to look in 5 of the 6 places Ms. Lerner's emails could have existed: the backup tapes, her BlackBerry, the server, the backup server, and the loaner laptop. In fact, the IRS barely looked for this missing emails at all, according to TIGDA. Now let's talk about what Mr. Koskinen did do. In April, his agency notified the Treasury Department and the White House that Ms. Lerner's emails were missing. And then he waited. And then he waited some more until June, when the IRS finally told Congress by burying a couple of sentences in the 5th page of an attachment in a letter to the Senate Finance Committee. That was on June 13th, 2014. That triggered a flurry of hearings in Congress, and Mr. Koskinen came up to testify to explain what he said. And then he lied. We've got 3 quotes here I want to share with you, among many. But let's look what he told us on June 20th in 2014. 7 days after finally telling Congress that Ms. Lerner's emails were missing, he said, "Since the start of the investigation, every email has been preserved. Nothing has been lost. Nothing has been destroyed." That's not true. The investigation began in May of 2012. The Inspector General found the IRS destroyed evidence, 422 backup tapes that contained as many as 24,000 emails to and from Ms. Lerner, and that happened on March 4th of 2014, which was discovered after they discovered there was a problem. And go to the second quote, if I could. This is on the same day, June 20th, 2014. Mr. Koskinen testified before Congress, quote, "We confirmed that backup tapes from 2011 no longer existed," end quote. That wasn't true either. The backup tapes were intact until March 4th of 2014, almost 2 years after the congressional investigations began, and nearly 1 month after the IRS knew there was a problem with Lois Lerner's emails. At best, this is gross negligence. We go to the third quote. To me, this is one of the most troubling. This is July 23rd, another full month afterwards, July 23rd of 2014. He was asked what was meant by the word confirmed. He said, "Confirmed means that somebody went back and looked and made sure that, in fact, any backup tapes that had existed had been recycled," end quote. That was completely and totally false. Nobody at the IRS went back and confirmed that the tapes had been destroyed. The Inspector General interviewed the people who were responsible, and they said that nobody had ever asked for the backup tapes. In fact, all told, the Inspector General, it took him 15 days start to finish to go find these, and they did recover 1,000 emails. Thanks, you can take that down. If they had done so after learning that some of the Lerner's emails were missing in early February, they could have found the backup tapes before they were destroyed. We know this because, again, the Inspector General only took them 15 days. Tim Camus, the Deputy Inspector for Investigations at TIGTA, summed it up by testifying, quote, "The best we can determine through the investigation, they just simply didn't look for those emails. So for the over 1,000 emails we found on the backup tapes, we found them because we looked for them," end quote. We're here today because Mr. Koskinen provided false testimony. He failed to comply with a duly issued subpoena. And when he knew there was a problem, he failed to properly inform Congress in a timely manner. In fact, I would argue that he actively misled Congress. Nor has Mr. Koskinen ever made an attempt to clarify or amend any of his prior statements. He continues to stand by all of these statements. They are not true. Look at the testimony that wasn't entered into the record. Sentence 3 of the testimony that he put forward, or tried to put forward here, says, "I stand by ready to cooperate with your committee with regard to any actions it deems appropriate." But I noticed that he didn't show up at the hearing here today, even though he was invited. And for him to say later on page 4, "I testified truthfully and to the best of my knowledge in answering questions concerning the search for and production of emails related to the investigation," he still doesn't get it, because that's not true.
Mr. Chairman, regular order.
The gentleman.
Regular order, sir.
The gentleman.
That was my concluding comment. Thank you.